Hello. Good afternoon. I guess I should have written that intro for myself that SOVAS asked for. Hi, I'm Wil Wheaton. I'm a client of Wes Stevens, and today I'm going to tell you what I bet a lot of you already know, which is why Wes is amazing. I met Wes right around 2006 at one of the lowest low points of my career. I had just been dumped by the voiceover agency that had represented me since I was 7 years old. The agent who dumped me was not the agent who signed me in 1979. And they thought the best way to wrap up this 35-year relationship was with a perfunctory phone call to my manager. It did not feel great. There is a reason Day of the Locust still resonates with me. So while I recovered from that shock, my manager, Chris Black, saw an opportunity and got to work arranging meetings with a few voiceover agents who were willing to take a chance on me. And that was not an easy lift. I want to put this moment in context for you. Around 2006, I was not a best-selling author and audiobook narrator. I was not Wil Wheaton, who was on The Big Bang Theory. I was a former child actor with one movie and a few years on a cult TV series to my credit. It is a tale as old as the industry itself. I had had a brief moment of success and then just sort of faded away. Like I hadn't really done anything wrong, but I had never managed to find myself in a place where I could do something right. And meeting Wes changed all of that. In 2006, our industry was resisting and was about to lose a fight against a paradigm shift of power and influence, away from legacy broadcast media to online culture. I saw our industry bifurcating into those who would protect that status quo at all costs because it had worked very well for them for a very long time, and the rest of us who were excited about and embracing this rapidly arriving future and its attendant opportunities. We were empowered by emerging technology to work together and build a new way of doing things in our industry, a way that would open doors for people like me that had been slammed in our faces and held shut for decades. The two biggest factors were streaming's potential promise of unlimited bandwidth for niche programming, like The Guild, which led to my series Tabletop, which led to me being cast in Felicia Day's award-winning Third Eye, and the growing influence of blogs and this new thing we were calling social media. When I was one of its first few thousand subscribers, Twitter was mostly exclusive to nerd culture rather than the white nationalist fascism that it is today. The wider media ecosystem had no idea how it was about to fundamentally change a century of audience and artist interaction or create the hashtag influencer and that economy. So my meeting with Wes happened at the end of this day where we had met with 2 or 3 fancy 3-letter agencies. Now I know that Vox is technically a 3-letter agency, but that's a word, not an acronym, so in my head, very different. The 3-letter agents I met with were wonderful. They all wanted to help me build my voice acting career. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I had to convince this room that I was more than just a former child actor carrying around all the baggage that implied. But these agents were focused on reinvigorating a career that barely existed in an industry that was dying. I genuinely liked every one of them, but I left those meetings feeling like they just didn't get me. They didn't see what made me different from someone else who had a similar voice to mine. They just didn't have the vision that I was looking for. Wes got me immediately. We talked about voice acting for like 5 minutes, and then Wes turned his attention to my blog, which was novel and a big deal at the time, and all of the things that I was doing online. Vox was about to start the first of its kind in the industry online division, and Wes wanted me to be part of that. Where the other agents had been enthusiastic to help me salvage what I could of a voice acting career inside an old system, Wes outlined a plan to help me build a new career, one that would be supported by my experience, my existing body of work, but driven and powered by what I had worked so hard to create online. Wes saw that I was uniquely situated at that moment in time to roll initiative with advantage while everyone else was still putting the finishing touches on their character sheet. None of you know what I just said because it is a Dungeons & Dragons reference that I put in this speech as a treat to myself. Wes saw past the former child actor mask the industry had strapped to my face and locked onto my skull. Wes saw me. He saw me as a person, as an artist, as a storyteller. He saw that I was going to be a future hashtag influencer. He saw things in me that I did not know were there. And I knew that if I was going to have a second act in my life and my career, Wes was going to be a huge part of it because he had that vision and he had that courage. I walked out of that meeting feeling hopeful and optimistic about my career for the first time since I was a teenager. And it turns out that that optimism was not misplaced. I mean, I'm speaking to you today from what I hope is not quite the middle of the second act of my life. And that's because Wes helped me create it. I have read that humans invented the idea of luck to give ourselves agency and assign causality to purely random events. When something out of our control aligns with all the hard work we have done in pursuit of a dream, and that dream starts to come true, we say we got lucky. Now, I'm not sure that I believe in luck, but I absolutely believe in working hard to make your dreams come true. And I know, thanks. I know that nobody in this industry gets anything done on their own. I know that our agents need to be more than our business partners and our representatives. We need our agents to be our defenders, our protectors, our champions, and in very rare cases, they become our friends. And so it is with tremendous gratitude and humility that I stand before you today as the luckiest man in this room. And I ask you to please join me in welcoming to the stage someone who is all of the things we hope for in an agent and a human being. My dear friend, and this year's most worthy recipient of the 2023 Backstage Vanguard Award. My friends, please welcome Wes Stevens.
Okay. I'll close it up. Thanks. I'm screwed. All right. Congratulations. Thank you. Come on. Is somebody giving it to you? All right, I don't know what I'm doing with that. They said don't put that on here. Thank you, Will, for choking me up. Hey, everybody. All right. Wow. Thank you, Joan and Rudy, the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences, and Backstage Magazine for this honor. I am moved and I am humbled. Thank you, Will, for coming out to present the award and being a dream client and a friend. I cherish our work together. Thank you, Tom Lawless, the president of Vox, my business partner and one of my best friends of 20 plus years. I just have to get through this page without crying and then it gets good, but this is gonna be rough. For helping me build and lead Vox from the beginning, the company does not exist without you, nor do I. Thank you to our staff today and over the 22 years of Vox's history. You make the company hum and you're its hearts and hands in the world. This one, to the clients. The soul of Vox, it is the deepest honor to be trusted with the advocacy of your extraordinary talent. I've been able to be a part of some of the most fascinating lives, projects, and creations There really is no business like show business. Thank you, Nathan. I am blessed to work and partner with my two best friends. You inspire me to be better and go further. To Maurice Tobias, who met a nerdy regional agent in Columbus, Ohio 30 years ago and saw something bigger, starting my journey into Los Angeles. You recognized talent and generously uplifted it, demonstrating how that's done right, a cornerstone example for my career. David Brady, Pat Brannon, Judy Rich, Carol Fields for hiring the quirky kid in the bow tie who was too big for his britches, putting up with me, and eventually selling me your voiceover department to start Vox. Thank you to my father and mother for an amazing childhood, a great education, real examples of leadership, integrity, and love, and my sister, the OG Magic Kid. That'll make sense in a minute. And to my husband, Alex, for putting up with the after hours and nowadays the work from home during hours version of me. None of this works without the foundation of a good home and the heart that is set there and our four-legged family. Okay. Got through pay one. Thank you. Now down to business. The agent is the kid on the playground who spots the other kid who's got a magic sparkle and stops the bullies. Kid agent protects Magic Kid. He dishes a taste of Magic Kid's genius out for free, setting the hook, and then charges everyone $1 more to see it again. The agent believes in talent. They seek to understand the inventory of possibilities. They cultivate and leverage this precious human intellectual property. They see the angles and anticipate the utilization of their creations in the world, crafting a fair and equitable deal, seeking to build a sustainable model for the individual talent, a lasting career versus the one-off booking. Here's the 16 rules that rose through my mistakes to shape the past 30 years of my work and life. 1, point of view. Talent book because they are courageous and take a unique point of view. This is the spark that breathes life into a project, a point of view. 2, trust your gut. All we must do is ask for inspiration, intuitive thought, a decision, and the answers will come. There's no need to struggle. Trust the voice in your heart, not head. Trust your gut. 3, elevate those you deal with. Every deal, every call, meeting, and interaction, we can either elevate or deflate. Lift up. It's easier and it creates more choices versus dead ends. Be generous, elevate those you deal with. 4, always leave a pleasant fragrance. Leave the room filled with people who look like they have smelled a rose or frankincense versus a fart. Don't be a source of sour sensations. Always leave a pleasant fragrance. Black pen, red pen. My father told me 29 years ago, as I was imminently going to be fired from my first assistant job here in Los Angeles due to quote-unquote mistakes, get a notebook, a black pen, a red pen, date each day, and write everything down in black and cross it off in red when it's done. I've gone more digital, but still do a version of this to this day, and have insisted countless assistants adopt this when their mistakes begin mounting. Black pen, red pen. 6, spell clients' names correctly. Details matter, especially if someone is trusting you to advocate on their behalf. Taking the time to get someone's name right is simple, but it's also fundamental. Spell clients' names correctly. 7, return calls, now emails, the same day. As much as possible, get back to folks, even just to leave word the same day. In this order: family, colleagues, clients, buyers. Return calls the same day. See the tree, see the forest. Understand the relationship between the tree and the forest. Micro, macro, and their interrelationship. This is the foundation of every call, email, and booking. The difference between just doing transactions and building careers, between doing a job and building a department or a company. This is the root of innovation. See the tree, the forest, and the relationship. No one wants to know the toilets on the Lido deck are backing up. Dramaturgy. Be pros. Keep the drama in-house and the public image of smooth sailing. Nobody wants to know the toilets on the Lido deck are backing up. Listen. Emotional intelligence. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen and talk in that ratio. You'll hear the issues, see the landscape, and better be able to navigate any situation. Listen. 11. Know, an essential word. Know where you can bring value and where you can't. Be able to say no without FOMO. No. 12. Silence. Aside from listening, silence is the second most powerful tool in negotiation. Be comfortable with silence. See what I did there? 13, getting to yes. Every real deal is possible, and there's a harmonious place where everyone says yes and feels okay with what they're giving and getting. Find this place, getting to yes. 14, geometric progression, physics. A 1-inch domino can knock over a 2-inch domino. And if you keep going, the 29th domino is the height of the Empire State Building. The 50th plus domino is the distance from here to the moon. Shoot for the moon and start with tipping today's domino, the next indicated action, geometric progression. 15, pace and place. Everything is in a natural order or flow. Don't push water. Live in choices versus decisions and trust the pace and place of things. Don't force it. Pace and place. 16, share your ideas. People rarely steal them, and the ones that do, if smart, become partners. Share your ideas. Vox is Latin for voice. May you always listen to your inner Vox. Thank you. All right.
Wait a minute, Wes. Don't go anywhere. There's still more to dish.
You want to hear more?
Oh, of course.
All right.
We are going to bring out the president of Vox. He's also Wes's boss, so awkward. Please welcome Tom Lawless.
Kind of wanted to let the music go a little longer. That was great.
That was rough.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry for the
hello,
crying.
Leslie.
What's that?
Hi. How are you?
Emotional.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. You know, it's so great to be here and doing this today. It's weird to have all of you here because we do this every day, whether it be on Zoom or whatever, whatnot, and it's communication, and now there's an
Telegram.
audience. Yeah, exactly. But it's exciting to be here, and I want to start a little bit. You touched on it a little bit with, in your speech, but SOVAS and some of these other organizations have done an amazing job of kind of raising the awareness of voiceovers in general. More people in the general public, I think, are aware of this industry and what we do. But back when you started, back in 1995, no one knew what this was. Tell us again a little bit more in detail how you got to LA and how you got involved with voiceover. And I know you mentioned Maurice. Tell me a little bit more about that story.
So we have a policy over the years when we've interviewed assistants, if they say, I've always wanted to be in voiceover, we refuse to hire them because they're lying. That's on the behind the scenes side. I do believe in front of the mic side, many people want to be in voiceover, but behind the scenes, I just don't believe them. And my story was similar. In college, I majored in finance and marketing at the University of Virginia, but I produced a lot of theater and dance. I loved the arts, but I loved being behind the scenes. Was graduating, everyone was interviewing with the banks. It wasn't really my bag. I interviewed to be a buyer at the May Company. In the final interview, I knew I was going to get the job, and I stopped this executive VP, and I said, I'm not going to get this job, so at least let me walk out of here with the intel of why. And he said, we think you're too creative. And I then told this crazy, I'm not a sports fan, so I told a baseball analogy, and it was pathetic. And I didn't get the job. And so then I went and saw a management professor and the head of the drama department, and they both said, you're supposed to be a producer. And I said, well, how do I get to that? And they said, go become an agent. And so then it was about, do I move to New York? Do I move to LA? I went home to Columbus, Ohio, until my father, a Green Beret colonel, said, get a job. And I called up this little agency there called Creative Talent, and because the head of the drama department said, go become an agent. I said, hey, would you guys like an intern? They're like, what? Like in Columbus, Ohio? I'm like, yeah, come on down. Second day on the job, they realized oh, this kid's smart. And they were like, how would you like to start our voiceover department? I was like, what is that? And they're like, they described it. And I said, no, that doesn't sound very glamorous. And they said, do you want to get paid? I'm like, here we go. It's not very illustrious, but that's how it started. And then I, was hustling there, booking like Ross Perot impressions and, and just like local voiceover in the age of the reel-to-reel and cassette. Like, this is how long ago that is. And then Maurice Tobias came through town to coach a workshop, and a talent, Pam Conley, said, you got to meet this lady. I still remember the restaurant. I took her to lunch. We talked about painting elephants. Before that was predatory, because now you're not supposed to buy elephant paintings anymore. And
Noted. Thank you.
It's predatory. It's not cute anymore. And I used to have an elephant painting in my office for years. And she introduced me to Talent Group Inc., which were the four people I thanked, David Brady, et cetera. And they hired me as an assistant. And I was an agent a year later. I was department head. Again, that's fuzzy. I was a partner with.
I think it was when I was there, so it was probably about 3 or 4 years after was the department head, because I was there when it happened.
And I bought anyway, there was some stuff going down, and I went to Tom one day. I'm like, I think I'm going to buy an agency. You want to go with me? And we didn't know how it was going to go down. And that was 7 years in, and they were very kind in letting me buy. They let me buy the voiceover department and start Vox.
And the rest, as they say, is history, or at least to the point. We're not done yet,
Literally.
so I guess it's not complete history. Well, thank you for that. And, while we're here, we're talking about, one of the, obviously you're being honored not just because what you've done as an agent, just in general, but also because of your innovation to the industry. I've been pretty fortunate, been on the front line of watching how that brain works for the last 25 years. But curious, through all of the innovations and through all the, movements that have been done, what innovation within our industry are you most proud of, bringing to Vox?
We're the first office in the country, if not, I won't say the world, but in the United States, we were the first office to say, let's audition from home. And it was at a time when competitors were like, he doesn't care about his talent. He's closing his booth. I'm like, I'm not closing my booth. I have an engineer. I just don't understand why we're running a coffee shop in the lobby and not making money on it. And I didn't understand, there were competitors who had waits of an hour, 2, 3 hours for auditions. And I was like, #dignity. Like, why would you wait that long? And I just respected the client, and I looked at their day and how complicated it was, and I looked at the process of creativity, and the technology was then there at that point. And it took a decade for the technology to get there. We did this about 15 years ago. And it was, but there were multiple factors. We had also already figured out that whoever got the audition in first, the producers do not listen to things in order. And they don't wait. It's not a diplomatic process. They know where the best stuff comes from, and they listen to those first, and they start listening, and once they hear something they like, they stop. So based on those competitive factors, we knew blowing up the audition process and making it nonlinear would just keep giving us competitive advantages. And it took, we've always been ahead of the technology curve, and sometimes it's dangerous, and sometimes there's a lag of catch-up, and that can be a bit painful. But that hands down, I mean, in doing what I just described, even before that, we had created a computerized scheduling system, because scheduling was a freaking nightmare on paper. But the process of doing this from home was the blow-up of no longer creating paper scripts that had to be laid out every night ahead of time, and it dramatically expanded the volume that we could handle. And I think the benefits of that to this day are obviously seen on the websites, like, the various voiceover marketplaces, and then in the agency front, we could never have handled the volume we handle today. And then one of the ways we've innovated even past that in this moment is creating Virtual Vox, which is again, it was about looking at the staff's analog responsibilities in terms of listening to 1 million or going through 1 million emails and not having things centralized, clients getting scripts, in multiple emails. And it was like, well, let's create a platform where everything's in one place. The client gets all their stuff in one place. They load everything in one place. The staff is able to process things in one place, and we can deliver that out to the buyer more efficiently. And I think the next iteration is conversations I'm having on not on the replacement side of it, but on the automation sides of it internally, so that we can be more efficient on the uses of artificial intelligence within business systems.
And I do, as
I went
someone,
beyond the initial answer.
that was good
sorry.
stuff. No, and by the way, that was my answer. So it's like the newlywed game. We got it right. We matched.
Woo!
That was my thought.
Been
and I
dating
think
for 20, how long? Long time.
25, close.
Long time.
And so one of the things too about like some people that are here are going to go, well, whatever. Everyone does it from home. Like it's hard to describe at the time. That was a big deal. It was a big risk, and it was nerve-wracking a little bit, because we thought it was the right thing to do, and Wes really thought it was the right thing to do. But to actually put it into motion and be the first one to kind of put that toe in the water when other agencies were using it against us and this and that, like it just, I don't know, just letting some folks here
Tom
know,
is
but-
my cautionary partner in that I tend to be like, Tom, we're going to do this, this, and this. And he goes, okay, let's talk about this. And a lot of times I'm like, okay, that's some practical input. And I come back with the revision, and eventually Tom goes, okay, I think we can do this. And sometimes, like on emails, I'll be like, Tom, we're going to send this email, and we'll be going over it. We don't work in the same office anymore, but we would be working in the office, and we'd be going over the email and talking about it. I'm like, I already sent it. He'd be like, I'm like, let's see what happens. My husband will tell you I still have that personality.
Wesley, you've been an agent for a long
Thomas.
time. Have you ever done any voiceover?
Oh, fuck
Hint,
you.
I know the answer to this. I'm curious, tell us the story about that, and then I also want you to relay how that has affected you and how you've formed representation over the last 25 years.
I did do some acting in high school and college, so at least had the perspective of, and I think it's important for the agent to understand the creative process. And I was a creative person. I obviously got pushed into the industry because the corporate universe said you're too creative, which I was amazed that that was a negative. I thought, and thank God I got into this industry where it is very much a positive. On some levels, we do have a business that is very fear-based at times, which is a problem. To answer your question, I was an assistant, and someone didn't show up for an audition, and so the agent threw me in the booth to read opposite a client. We used to do group reads together, which is insanity that was ever done, but okay. And so it was a commercial for the program ACT, and we were game show contestants. And I was like, I got to do a good job so this client will book the job. Well, then when they called with like the avails, and it was like these game show contestants, and I was the disorganized contestant, the other contestant had the computer program. And so I kept breaking down and crying. And I was having fun with it. And they called, and they're like, and I'm taking the call. I'm like, we'd like to put someone on veil for this ACT commercial. I'm like, oh, great. Who'd you like? And they're like, Wes Stevens. I'm like, oh, he's not available. They're like, no, we really want him. And I'm like, hold on one second. I'm like, boss. I'm like, they want me. Oh, you're gonna go. I'm like, well, I can't go. So I went, and I don't remember the actor's name. He was the boy who could fly. And he,
Oh, right.
What's his name?
I don't remember.
He's never been a client, so we don't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, he did his lines like, you can go. We'd like to keep the crying guy for a little longer. And they made me just cry. And that was the beginning and the end of my voiceover career. Because once you're franchised, you cannot do any work.
Exactly. You
Not
can
okay.
only do that as
Tom almost
assistant.
became the voice of Lexus at one point.
It was Mazda.
Mazda.
And kind of a similar situation, I had to step in for a group read, and they had already had their announcers, but the announcer read, was throughout the group read radio spot, said, read the part of the announcer so we can keep this thing flowing. I'm like, okay. So I did. Same thing. A couple days later, they called up, we like this guy who did the announcers for, we wanted to do a callback session, this and that. And I am brand new. I'm still just trying to figure out how any of this stuff works. And so the only thing I knew was that a TV spot paid $450 at the time for a session or something. So Wes comes up to me and goes, dude, if you get this, you can't quit. And I'm like,
He was a very good assistant.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, kind of laughed at him. I'm like, look, I could use the $450 like you wouldn't believe, but I don't think it's a retirement fund. Like, I'm not going anywhere. He's like, no.
This wasn't like just one spot. He was.
Well, this is my point. Like, you go, no. If you get this, you're the voice of Mazda. This is going to be a 6-figure gig. I'm like, and so when I went into the booth to do what I did, I don't know how many people are Family Ties fans, but I was basically Michael J. Fox at the quiz show where I just froze like a deer in headlights. But it was a great experience because it just kind of also, like, not that I didn't know my clients were talented and what they did was hard and everything else, but it was just a next level experience where, again, spoiler alert, I didn't get the campaign. But it just kind of showed me like what it takes to do this, and it's just affected, the way I, look at, represent folks and fight and go about and know what they go through. So just that even small little experience, helped with that. And so it's just funny that we both had moments like that.
I think there's value to boots on the ground. Like, there's a value to going in. I think everyone's agent or reps, it would be great if they had that at least one-time experience behind the mic.
Yep.
Or the audition process. Like, I think that's where we've innovated from, is also, I don't just look at things at face value. I consistently, over the years, have looked at things at, like, how can we do this better? Sure, for us on a profit margin level in terms of efficiencies, because I hate redundancies and I hate inefficiencies.
I've heard that about you.
Yeah, I get pretty violent about that. It's not an understatement.
I've
thrown printers in more toxic days. I'm less toxic nowadays. But I look at it also on the side of, like, the client, the talent is creates from a place where they aren't in a struggle with the lower rungs of Maslow's hierarchy. So how can we get you out of survival mode and into thrive mode? And how can I remove the pressures of like driving all over town to do a voiceover auditions is crazy. And so it's why we did away with it. And so that you could go in your booth at the time of day that's best for you to be creative and lay down the track at your pace and edit it at your pace and redo it. And my husband's an actor, and I'm like, okay, I think you've done that one too many times. It's like, but that's all part of the process, is like discovering that and creating space, I think, is part of what we've tried to do for our clients.
Great. Been very fortunate over the course of the career to work with some amazing talent on some amazing projects. Is there one, that stands out that you're most proud of?
There's a lot. It's really hard.
Yeah. That's why I asked it.
Yeah. I mean, the two that's hard. I mean, like, I work with 2 different Alexas. I work with the original Siri. Those have been powerful experiences in terms of innovation and then being at the front line of where our world is going. Putting Ed in Up and telling Ed when he didn't want to go back for the last callback.
Maybe let everyone, not everyone, Ed Asner is who he's talking about.
So Ed didn't want to go back. Ed was curmudgeonly like the character Carl Fredricksen, and he didn't want to go back, and it was between him, James Garner, and
Alan Arkin.
Alan Arkin, who had just won the Academy Award for Little Miss Sunshine. And I'm like, Ed, you got to go in. I'm like, Ed, just trust me, if you get this, it's going to be one of the best gigs of your career. And I'm saying this to a guy who's won the Emmy both dramatically and comedically for the same role, Lou Grant. So it was pretty, and run SAG, and he's like, oh, that's pretty bold. And I'm like, trust me. And his son told me at the memorial service, the night they went to Academy Awards was the only time Ed Asner ever got invited to the Academy Awards. And it was an extraordinary experience. That one was great, and then it's funny in Pixar movies, but they're 2 pivotal movies, I think, in the canon of animation. I got 3 stories. A Bug's Life was the other one. I put David Hyde Pierce in that. That was the first animated feature I did. Funny story about that one. 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, phone rings, no receptionist, call goes right through. Hello, is this Mr. Stevens? Yes, it is. Hi, this is Steve Jobs, president of Apple Computer and Pixar. I'm like, hello, Steve. He just sounded so nerdy, and I was like, oh, it's some fucking voiceover person doing an impression, I'm like, what a weird name to choose. Anyway, it went back and forth to the point where finally he's like, seriously? And I was like, oh God. And they were trying to pull a fast one to run the first commercials with talent on camera. Because at that point, voiceover people, like celebrities didn't want to be necessarily identified with the animated features yet. Shrek hadn't happened yet. It was the beginning of the whole thing. And so they wanted to run a commercial with David, and they wanted to do it for next to nothing, and we ended up getting a nice payment. The other part of the story is my computer broke, and it was an Apple, and they said, like, it'll be 2 weeks to fix it. So I wrote Steve a letter, and I was like, the last one was like, 2 weeks, Steve, think different. And and they sent Apple VIP services, like, Mr. Stevens, we hear you have a problem. We'd like to. And then there was another booking I was going to talk. Oh, Joe Lasky. When I signed Joe, he was a challenging client, and it wasn't so much him. It was that management had kind of ruffled a lot of feathers in the marketplace. So there was a rehabilitation, and part of the rehabilitation was getting him to a place where he would finally get to earnestly read for bugs. And this man was the best at the Mel Blanc characters. I saw him work with June Foray and Chuck Jones, and that session at Capitol Records in the studio where Frank Sinatra and them had recorded, watching him be Sylvester and Tweety was extraordinary. And then watching him win the Emmy for, which is the highlight of his career, and a good, super talented man. And when people say, what's it take to be a great animation performer, I always go back to Joe, and I'm like, if you can do a live performance at the Santa Barbara Bowl of Carnival and the Animals and have a fight between Bugs and Daffy in real time and overlap the voices, you've got what it takes.
Yeah, truly one of the most talented guys we ever worked with. Really extraordinary.
Hands down.
Yeah. What is, this is a tough one. What do you consider the most important job of being an agent? Because I know that's, most people just think, hey, you get a job, you negotiate this and that. What do you consider the most important part of what we do?
I referenced it in the speech, the thank you. It's advocacy. My job is to be on the front lines of the corporate environment, which is where I say you don't always want to know the toilets and the Lido deck are backing up. The client doesn't need to know all the awful things that are said by the corporate environment. It's my job I have a thicker skin. I have an ability to negotiate. I have ability to get into very heated arguments, screaming matches. I had, when I did John's second deal for Charlie's Angels, John Forsythe, it was very unpleasant. It was 5 business affairs guys and me screaming at me on a phone call. And at the end, one of the guys goes, oh, I got a little heated, sorry. I'm like, all good for me. I was just posturing, got what I wanted. Talents, you're never supposed to experience that. It's never supposed to touch the artist. And another deal I'm super proud of is Futurama. Last year was a brutal fight. It was brutal. It was 12 months of fighting with that network. And, there's more and more deals these days that are not good faith negotiations. They are unpleasant. They're not playing by the rules. They don't honor precedent. They're just like, well, this is the way it's going to be. And it's like, there is less honor in the business. And I think we're the knights. We put on the armor, and it's a great honor to do that. Because I was bullied as a kid. So I think walking home from school and practicing all the comebacks, I'd walk home from school behind the buildings on this one military post because the bullies were on the other side. And I'd be like, and I'd say this, and I'd say that, and I would do this. And I think I practiced all the shit that I do as an agent. But my father, who is a Green Beret lieutenant colonel, was just like, just pop them and they'll leave you alone. I'm like, I don't believe in violence. And now I do believe in a certain amount of intellectual and verbal defense, violence in the form of defense to achieve an outcome like what just happened in the strike. That's extraordinary negotiating against those entities. It's extraordinary to get the outcome they got. And we do that, and then, our job on the front lines is to better, that's the baseline. My job is to get you better than that. And my job is to look at things and then also to be able to, I think so much of it is being strategic, which is not just getting the best deal, but sometimes we leave the best deal behind because it builds rapport and good faith with a partner that we're going to be in business with for a decade. Which booking do you want? One that's one booking, you're in the studio, you're out, or do you want to be working for that company for 10 years? And it's not always easy. We've passed things. I mean, J.K. Simmons, who we've had on Farmers Insurance for many, many years, I had a deal before Tom made that deal for Comfort Inn. It was a nice deal, and he just finished Spider-Man and Juno. His agents were like, "You're overexposed." I said, "It's a shitty director. It's not that much money. Let's pass." We, as a small company at that time, I needed that commission. And we passed, and because we passed something, he would never have been considered for Farmers, which has turned into it's over 10 years.
Well, 14-ish.
And he was able, that was mailbox, they call it mailbox money. That was mailbox money that allowed that actor to say yes to Whiplash, which won him an Academy Award. I'm not taking credit for it, but we know that, in our own weird little way, we contribute to a rich, artistic, we contribute to the art.
Indeed. And you do. Honestly, to that point, I did want to, take a moment and, sometimes, especially when you're kind of knee deep in things, you don't necessarily, I know sometimes I do, I'm sure you do too, sit there and like, am I really making a difference, in all this stuff? Like, it just, even more so probably now that we're all working remotely, which is great, but you don't see the folks, you don't see some of the impact. So I think it's important for you to kind of just, this is just a small portion, but sit, look at the audience, look at the room, take in this moment and go, this is, what you've built over 25, 30 years, and there's more to come, and soak in these moments, because it's really well deserved, and it's just pretty cool to be able to sit here and share this with you.
Don't make me cry again.
I figure you're cried out, you're good.
I can't believe I cried in public. I have to tell them every now and then someone cries in our offices, and Tom's like, "Oh, Wes, don't laugh at them." I cried in public. Anyway.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for Will's thing either. That was really touching.
Very.
Yeah, that was great. So we literally just have a few, very few, maybe even less than a minute. But I didn't know if there's one or two of you that wanted to walk up to a microphone if they had a question that you wanted to ask Wes.
Yeah.
Please, you're right there.
Receive.
Hi.
Wes, congratulations.
Thank you very
My name
much.
is Erica.
Hi, Erica.
I find it incredible that you are the groundbreaker for seeing that there's talent beyond New York and LA. Being from Maryland, Washington, D.C., that opportunity really didn't open until COVID for me. Yep. Just putting a 212 area code validated me for New York talent, even though I lived in Baltimore. So thank you for having that innovation. That being said, now that you're not the only one and it's everybody, the pool has widened. And I think you touched on it earlier, when it comes down to those decision makers in casting, they pluck from who they know and who they have relationships with. And now that there are so many auditioning, some of us may not be heard. Sure. So you as an agent, how do you advocate, or do you advocate for all that you represent? So even if you've got the new talent coming on board versus you're established, but you see something promising in this new talent, do you take a step forward and go, I really want you to take a listen?
Yeah, I mean, the corporate culture at Vox is we will not sign you if we will not, we will only sign a client that we are going to get out. Mm-hmm. I can't make the market book you, mm-hmm. but I know that Tom, Michaela, the rest of the staff, there's no one on the list we're not casting. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless there's a point where sometimes it's not working, and then the ship sails, and then we release a client, and it's a business. Mm-hmm. We're building a portfolio. The portfolio should represent the marketplace, but we don't sign people we sign people to try to build careers, mm-hmm. and to do more than one-off bookings. Mm-hmm. So we look at when we pitch, someone comes into us as referred to us, because almost everything is by referral nowadays, we'll look at that talent against the broader portfolio and the marketplace. What are our needs? And then we'll determine, like, can we get this person out? And it doesn't matter if the sound is right and we like what's going on. And a lot of times at our level, there's a body of experience, and that person has hit a level. Maybe they've been doing a lot of non-union stuff, but they're booking a lot, and they're like, I really want entry into a different sector of the business, or I want bigger, better jobs. I want the things that don't necessarily, not everything makes it past the agencies into the broader marketplace. And so, some people want an upgrade, and we present that for them. But if you're on our list, it doesn't matter what level. You wouldn't be on the list unless you're competitive at our level, because you'll get lost. So I don't know if that answers the question.
It does.
But, and then in terms of, like, where people live, we've got people all over the world. Our issue is you got to have a US-based visa, because it makes it too hard to book if you don't. But we've managed, that's allowed us to work with a number of differently abled people, and we don't really see geographic anymore, because people can live anywhere and work.
Second part, did you always categorize your talent on your roster by their ethnicity?
We have, but we are, I think, one of the more, I don't know, I can't speak to other people's processes. We have been a very open, if we think a sound is great, just because it doesn't, that's what I said about point of view. Like, I think so many clients have booked gigs where the parameters were this, but because the client came in and did something really interesting with the copy. So maybe they're looking for a particular ethnicity, but we here, we try to be, as a corporate culture, we try to look at things as what's going to make this thing come to life. And that doesn't necessarily have an ethnicity to it.
Yeah, I mean, we will, like the lists, can be broken up like that a little bit, because, there's certainly a request for certain things, but that also doesn't mean that that's all you read on, in terms of what that is. And so the client will read on anything, in terms of what, if it makes sense, and we feel like there's a booking possibility in there. So
some of it's market driven.
Yeah.
There are now more so than ever, because I think there is a it makes sense, sensitivity. There are castings where, like, we want someone who's a First Nations person, we want someone who's Black, we want someone who's, Latinx, and they're very, if that's on the copy, we don't break that rule, obviously, because that project is being, I think, is honoring based on what the material is. And that will happen more in dramatic stuff and more in less commercial, more on the side of, like, something animated or something in gaming. Or does that answer the question?
It does. I wonder, because I was talking to my agent about that, if there is ever any pushback. I understand the rationale behind it, but being one of those categories, also puts me back into a pigeonhole. And so,
yeah, you're in a pigeonhole if you're agent.
Yeah.
Your voice, I would put you on everything. So I mean, it doesn't. But I can't change the.
Right.
I don't know how your agents see you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because for years before, like 20 years ago, they didn't ask for face with voice. In fact, I made myself a caricature so you wouldn't know what I was, because I had agents in DC say, "You're black enough." I said, "I don't sound black." So, but she wouldn't cast me on anything mainstream. So I just want to know if you ever pushed the envelope and said, "Look, just listen." There is no.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in part, some of the envelopes pushed by us, in that if we put you, our stuff is very well received, and if you're on the submission, they're going to listen. So they're not looking.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. This was great.